In the era of burning passion, MCA has decided to live its little life with peace of mind. Resolutely refuse to use their own money to subsidize foolish pillars and Qin Huairu. I, Ma Hua, will be full of integrity from today on, and when I have time, I will write the character Zheng. Silly Zhu. This Ma Hua is very bad. You're fucking prying into my corner again. However, when I first arrived, the first question that MCA faced was, where do I live? Keywords of the novel. Siheyuan. Starting from the corner of the silly pillar wall without pop-ups, Siheyuan. Starting from the corner of the silly pillar wall. Download the complete text. Siheyuan. Starting from the corner of the silly pillar wall. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Ma Hua, without a master. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Ma Hua, without a master. The sound of stir-frying is jingling, and the smell of scallions, garlic, and soy sauce is overwhelming. Ma Hua leaned against the slightly smoky black wall, yawned, and instinctively blinked. Wearing green clothes and thick cotton jackets, people with sleeves are busy shuttling between desks and stoves. I have been in this era for some time now. Ma Hua was completely unaccustomed from the beginning, but now he has gradually become a bit accustomed and occasionally becomes stunned. Just now, I was half distracted and half dozing off. This is the back kitchen cafeteria of the Red Star steel rolling plant. There is a grade 8 cook named Heyuju as the head chef, and many assistants such as Lu Lan and Pangzi. There is also a widow named Qin Huairu who sneaks into the cafeteria every now and then to talk to the master, Heyuju, and take some food and drink from the cafeteria. This is a group of familiar yet unfamiliar people. Not only because of Ma Hua's memories, but also because these people have appeared on television before. Ma Hua, are you still staring at me there? Hurry up, cut the block. A somewhat sturdy and old-looking man was holding an enamel teapot and calling out Ma Hua's name to him. The enamel cylinder is marked with a red star and the name Red Star Steel Rolling Plant. This is Heyuju, also known as the Silly Pillar. He is not usually considered bad, but once his temper rises, his evil nature becomes particularly strong, and he belongs to the category of guys who can fight impulsively, harm others, and consider their shortcomings regardless of the consequences. Today, the factory leaders are entertaining the leaders of their sister units. They need to use their cooking skills to make ends meet, not just a big pot of food. Silly Zhu looked at the time and let the kitchen assistants start working. Ma Hua agreed and cut his head. Lu Lan was washing vegetables and choosing dishes on the side, jokingly saying, Ma Hua, who do you think of as a big girl? I saw you staring blankly, the saliva is almost dripping down. Anyway, it's not you. Ma Hua replied casually. If it were really me, I wouldn't want it either. Your too young of meat is not enough for me to have a meal. Lu Lan laughed heartily. Working women in these years have a cheerful and generous demeanor, especially those who have been married and speak vulgar language, which can make young men blush with embarrassment. Ma Hua is a bit speechless. Why was she being teased by women? Okay, you're amazing. I can't blame you for not eating enough all day. Ma Hua murmured, and Lu Lan picked up a rotten vegetable leaf and threw it at him, laughing and cursing, go ahead. If you don't find a wife again, be careful that your father and sister.in.law will sweep you out of the house. Hi, for now, it's not like. Ma Hua spoke in his mouth, bowing his head and busily cutting vegetables proficiently in a moment. Silly Zhu put down the teapot, swayed his shoulders leisurely, and began to stir-fry with a big-shot appearance. Watch it, learn it. How much you can learn is all your ability. Silly Zhu said. Okay, master. A chubby, round-headed guy emerged and smiled at Silly Zhu. Ma Hua glanced at the chubby guy and nodded along. He didn't have much affinity for Silly Zhu and couldn't pronounce the word master. Now, he calls Silly Zhu master he. This change in title doesn't even bother silly Zhu himself, let alone others. Ma Huaning looked over and saw that silly Zhu's face became serious and serious. He started cooking oil, added vegetables, added ingredients, stir-fried over high heat and low heat. He is quite skilled in cooking. Watching silly Zhu cook 2 dishes, it seems like it's time for a meal. Not only do the leaders have to eat, but also the employees have to eat, and Ma Hua and Fat Man have started working again. The work in the canteen is laborious and tedious. We lift the manta cage, steam the mantu, put it into the manta basket, and cover it with a white, cotton-covered cloth. The big pot dishes over there are ready, and Ma Hua and Pengzi serve the dishes in a large iron bowl. The 2 of them carry the dishes to the household registration window. The workers of the steel rolling mill have already lined up with rice boxes and iron jars. Lu Lan started to go up to the front to cook, and Ma Hua, Fatty, and other kitchen assistants were also busy. Don't be fooled, Ma Hua, Fat Man, serve the dishes. Silly Zhu put down the frying spoon, picked up the teapot, and asked them to deliver vegetables to the small restaurant in the cafeteria. The Fat Man immediately nodded and bowed, "All right, master, please rest for now." He picked up the dishes ahead of Ma Hua, walked through the cafeteria corridor, and arrived at the entrance of a small restaurant, delivering the dishes while bowing down to introduce the names to the leaders. Ma Hua is enjoying it. Do you think I'm willing to compete with you for work? I am still happy and relaxed. I don't want to worship silly Zhu as my master. What are you doing so actively? The last dish was chicken stewed with mushrooms. The Fat Man brought it in and ran out happily, giving a thumbs up in front of the silly pillar. Master, your craftsmanship is amazing. That's a lot of excitement inside. That's it. I entered the kitchen at the age of 12, and it's been more than 10 years now. If I don't praise it yet, what's going on? Silly Zhu smiled with pride, and the crow's feet at the corners of his eyes squeezed together. He is not yet 30 years old and has a very old-fashioned appearance. At first glance, he looks like he is in his 30s or 40s. The chubby guy immediately stepped forward and praised him, and silly Zhu was even happier. After saying a few words, the conversation box opened, and silly Pillar was actually easy to coax, sitting happily on the side holding a teapot. After praising silly Zhu almost, the chubby guy looked at Ma Hua and chatted with him. Hey, Ma Hua. Just now, Lu Lan said what's going on in your family. Your father and brother are going to drive you out. Ma Hua felt a bit helpless and said, every family has a difficult scripture to recite. Ma Hua's parents are still alive, and his brother Ma Zhong has already married and started a family. Ma Zhong's wife is someone who knows how to plan and always wants Ma Hua to start a family and move out as soon as possible, so as not to eat more food and use more household things. These food and things are all things that Ma Zhong's wife sees as belonging to their family. Why should Ma Hua, who gets married sooner or later, eat and use them? Ma Hua's parents hope that the Ma Zhong couple will retire in the future, so they do not interfere much with Ma Hua's situation and there is no preference for him. If you can't resist the exclusion of your siblings, quickly find a wife to marry and then go out to start a family and business. This is your own skill. If you don't have this ability, then endure it. When can't you help it anymore? Hurry up and leave on your own family background is short, that's just such a thing. If you say who is a bad person, then it's not appropriate. In today's concept, the Ma Hua family has their own considerations and all make sense. Ma Hua's parents are taking care of their elderly parents, and they have long identified the eldest son, Ma Zhong, and his wife. They do not separate their families and keep them all for the eldest son. Don't look at the boss taking advantage now. In the future, if the elderly get injured or sick, it will also be theirs. So, Ma Hua's parents do not favor Ma Hua, and the eldest couple hopes that Ma Hua can quickly get married and move away. But this daughter-in-law and house are not necessarily available. Ma Hua is just an apprentice in the cafeteria of the steel rolling mill, earning less than 20 yuan. At least for 10 years, there is absolutely no need for him to arrange the qualifications for the distribution of rooms in the steel rolling mill. It can be imagined what kind of predicament he would face if he found his wife now. In this era, MCA already had a meager income and could only support themselves. In addition to renting a house and supporting the family, I'm afraid I will really be hungry and dizzy every day. It's not that Ma Hua wants to gnaw on his old age and shamelessly endure the disdain of his siblings, but so far, he has only just gotten used to this era. There is no way to get rich, and there is no way to get married or share a house. This is, every family has its own difficult to read scripture. In Ma Hua's heart, he always wanted to change, but he still had no idea where to start taking action. At this moment, Silly Zhu seemed to have discovered something interesting and stood up with a grin on his face, picking up a rolling pin. The fat man immediately asked, "Master, what are you doing?" "Rolling out noodles." Silly Zhu smiled and said, "Look at that kid." Fatty and Ma Hua followed his gaze and saw a white chubby boy wearing a gray cotton jacket and a pot lid standing timidly next to the oil, salt, soy sauce, and vinegar in the cafeteria. He pulled the soy sauce jar, holding a small bottle, and dribbled the soy sauce outside. The old-fashioned soy sauce jar is quite slippery, which causes the soy sauce to flow all over the ground, and there are not as many people entering the bottle as there are on the ground. Stick meme, this kid. Silly Zhu's tone was somewhat spoiled, ready to throw the rolling pin inside his hand to scare away the stick. At this moment, Ma Hua's eyes suddenly lit up with an inexplicable reminder. Seize the stolen meme and you can get a reward. He immediately rushed out before the foolish pillar took action. "Master please wait a moment and see if I catch this kid." End of this chapter. Chapter 2. He's just a child. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. He's just a child. Seize the stick meme to earn rewards. The stick meme stealing soy sauce from the cafeteria of the Red Star steel rolling plant was not necessary for Ma Hua to pay attention to. He is not a person with a strong sense of justice. He has a mind full of troubles and cannot solve them. So, what else is there to worry about this little brat's affairs? Furthermore, Ma Hua couldn't help but notice that Silly Zhu's attitude towards this meme was indulgent and approachable. Ma Hua's catchy meme may offend the master chef in the kitchen, and the days ahead will be even worse. But now with the prompt, the situation is different. After all, although Ma Hua has family members such as parents, siblings, and sister-in-law, his situation is like being left behind by others, and he is seen as the second son in the family who should leave home early. He must seize the opportunity to receive compensation. If we miss this opportunity and endure countless glares and ridicule, Ma Hua himself will regret missing the opportunity. Trivial matters and short family days are too frustrating. Even if Ma Hua knew that if something really happened, he would have to fight like a tiger and fight like a father and son soldier, but the family's daily life is really boring due to constant friction and petty calculations. He is not from this era and cannot be accustomed to this kind of family adjustment. It's even more impossible for some old men to come up with the idea that the true meaning of life should be bumped like this. As a young man currently only 20 years old, with sharp edges, a happy life is an instinct. After Ma Hua finished speaking, he didn't care if Silly Zhu's face remained unchanged behind him. He rushed out with one swift step and reached out to grab stick Zheng. Although the stick meme is white and chubby, it has a pair of excellent thief eyes and is not stupid. Silently, he ran away holding the soy sauce bottle. Just ran out a few meters and arrived at the back kitchen door of the cafeteria when a muffled sound hit a person who was about to enter. The newcomer takes a step back, and the stick meme also takes a step back. With this delay, Kanji immediately missed the best opportunity to escape. Ma Hua, who was already trying to catch the meme, was holding back his strength. Immediately holding down the meme and thanking the host, "Comrade, you have been a great help." The newcomer is quite tall, with a beard on his upper lips and a clean body. At first glance, he is a person on the table, and some people believe that he is a leader of a steel rolling mill. But he is not the leader, but the film projectionist Su Damao from the propaganda department of the steel rolling mill. Su Damao sometimes plays movies for promotion inside the factory, and sometimes plays movies for promotion outside the factory in production teams in rural areas, always able to speak fluently. Because he is eloquent, the leader often asks him to serve at the table with wine and entertain guests. At this moment, Su Damao was rubbing his stomach and watching Ma Hua hold down Bang Ji, who was constantly twisting and struggling, asking questions inside his mouth. What's going on? Isn't this a joke from the Qin widow's family? What are you doing in the cafeteria? What did this kid grow up on? He looks like a calf. He's so strong. At this moment, silly Zhu had already realized. Ma Hua, this kid's mind is not clear, he's taking the child seriously. This is just a child, what's wrong with stealing and touching? It's not an outsider. Ma Hua, isn't this reckless behavior? Quickly taking a step forward, before Ma Hua could speak, silly Zhu said, it's nothing, Ma Hua is playing with this child. Ma Hua. Why don't you quickly release the meme? Ma Hua exerted all his strength to press the stick stem and thought to himself, it's okay to let go of the stick stem. What about my reward? Don't expect me to release someone if the compensation is not in place. Silly Zhu felt even more frustrated when he saw Ma Hua not letting go of his stick. Ma Hua. Did you hear me? Ma Hua smiled and said, Master He, don't worry for now. I need to ask this child what's going on. This statement is purely delaying time. He doesn't care about the truth, he only cares about when the compensation will be received. Okay, Ma Hua. Why didn't I realize you were this kind of person before? Silly Zhu was even more angry when he saw that his words couldn't be confirmed. What kind of authority are you showing to the child? You have the guts to come at me. I see if you dare to touch my finger. Ma Hua continued to procrastinate and pretended not to understand. Oh, Master He, where did you say that? I caught this child with the soy sauce from the cafeteria. You didn't bring anything from the cafeteria, what can I compare with you? Silly Zhu is a stunned person, but not a real fool. Upon hearing these words, he immediately felt a sense of emptiness in his heart. Ma Hua, did he intentionally do it? I bring 2 big boxes of food home every day, and both he and the fat guy know what's going on. Why did he suddenly say the irony of, you didn't bring anything from the cafeteria? As you and I were talking, Su Damao looked lively on the side. Okay, Ma Hua, that's impressive enough. Are you the son of Qin widow who stole soy sauce on the spot? Silly Zhu immediately cursed back and said, Su Damao, fart your mother. Go somewhere cool, go somewhere cool. What makes such a young child steal? I happen to need soy sauce for cooking, so I asked this child to help me pour a little bit. It was not because I accidentally didn't pour it properly that I had a misunderstanding. Silly column, clean your his mother mouth for me. Su Damao was just trying to watch the excitement, but suddenly he was scolded with anger, your mother is dead, my mother is still fine, don't make a mother out of your mouth. Su Damao and Silly Zhu are also considered enemies whom we have known since childhood, and they know best how to beat the key points of Silly Zhu. As soon as he finished speaking, Silly Zhu became completely angry and rushed forward, kicking Su Damao down and hitting him. Silly Zhu has a short and sturdy body, knows the two-handed wrestling technique, and has a stable footwork. Most people are not his opponents. Although Su Damao is tall, he is not good at fighting. He is more adept at being smooth-tongued, boasting and praising. When he meets a foolish pillar, he only gets beaten up. Because Ma Hua held down the stick, the two of Silly Zhu and Su Damao actually started fighting, which can be considered rare at this moment. Ma Hua saw a prompt appearing in front of him. Remuneration distribution in progress. Subsequently, several people rushed out of the cafeteria hallway in a fit of anger. What are you doing? Is there any discipline left? The factory leaders are hosting a banquet for our brother units in the cafeteria and small restaurant. Are you doing this to add glory and color to our steel rolling mill? That's great. One by one, fight and fight. The person who spoke out to reprimand was a middle-aged man with gloomy eyes and dressed as a cadre, who was deputy directorly of the steel rolling mill. Beside him was a middle-aged man with an ordinary appearance, sweating from anxiety. It was Director Wang from the cafeteria. They obviously heard the noisy fighting in the cafeteria and hurriedly came out to calm the situation. If this kind of thing catches the eye of brother units, it's just a joke. Director Wang quickly spoke up and called out, "Heyuju, what are you doing with Su Damao? Su Damao is going to be at the table with a drink today. You beat him up, what should we do? Also, why did you beat him up? And Ma Hua, why did you fight with a child?" Ma Hua immediately said, "Director report, this child." Ma Hua. Silly Zhu exclaimed anxiously, "He's just a child." Ma Hua smiled and thought to himself, "Anyway, my compensation has already started to be paid, so I won't offend anyone. I don't know what's going on, but when I saw him pouring soy sauce, I caught him. It seems that master he knows more about this matter." Silly Zhu was overjoyed to see Ma Hua say this, and immediately fabricated a lie for the sake of memes. This child sneaked into the cafeteria to play. I think he was quite clever and asked him to pour some soy sauce. He poured a whole floor, and Ma Hua saw it. It was quite scary at first sight. Ma Hua listened to the lies of silly pillar, Heyuju, but remained silent. He is fully focused on the matter of receiving compensation. What silly pillars, stick memes, Su Damao. Ma Hua is too lazy to bother with them. What exactly is the compensation and why is it constantly being distributed? End of this chapter. Chapter 3. True Remuneration. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 True Remuneration. Heyuju, you said Ma Hua was surprised at first sight. Upon hearing the words of silly pillar, Heyuju, Director Wang angrily said, "I think Ma Hua did very well. This steel mill cafeteria is not personal, it's public. It's not possible for anyone to do a stitch or a thread. What kind of person are you, Yuju? Let such a sneaking child help you pour soy sauce. It has caused so much soy sauce to flow. This has caused losses, do you know?" Silly Zhu was taken aback for a moment, then nodded and said, "Yes, I know. I admit my mistake, I accept the punishment." In order to save the meme, he decided to admit his mistake. "Okay, just accept the punishment." Director Wang said, "Heyuju, you should be punished. By the way, why did you and Su Damao fight again?" "He cursed me and said my mother was dead." Silly Zhu angrily said. Su Damao also shouted, "He scolded me first and said to fart my mother." This scene is really unbearable to watch. Deputy Factory Director Li and Director Wang were originally angry because they were fighting in front of the leaders of their sister units, which was a bit embarrassing. Now, while feeling angry, I also feel amused. Where the hell are these two big hairy kids fighting with each other? A child who completely wears open crotch pants is level. You all shut up, it's just causing trouble. Director Wang said, "Director Li, what do you think these two people should do? Both of them have deducted their full attendance rewards for this month's work. Heyuju should write a letter of repentance and criticize it." Deputy Factory Director Li said, "It's really outrageous and embarrassing. It's just a fine criticism, it's okay, as long as the meme is okay." Silly Zhu, Heyuju breathed a sigh of relief and pushed a stick that he hadn't dared to insert a word into until now. He snatched the soy sauce bottle from his arms and said, "Stinky kid, why don't you leave now? Don't come again in the future. My soy sauce. How do I eat chicken now?" Stick memes hate to glance at silly Zhu and then stare at Ma Hua, remembering his appearance. It's all his fault for grabbing him, otherwise he would have run away long ago. Afterwards, Bang Ganfei quickly ran out of the cafeteria of the steel rolling mill. With so many adults present, he was not foolish, so of course he ran first before speaking. The stick meme ran away, and silly Zhu and Su Dumao were punished. Ma Hua's remuneration distribution is not yet over, which makes him quite puzzled. Everything is done, but the money is not in place. Am I being owed my salary? How should I get my salary? Ma Hua was thinking on one side, but on the other side, Deputy Factory Director Li glanced at Su Dumao, who had a swollen face and a blue nose, and said, Su Dumao, you can't go to accompany the wine with your appearance. Go home and rest. With a glance, I suddenly felt Ma Hua right in front of me, quite pleasing to the eye. Can you drink alcohol, this little comrade named Ma Hua? Ma Huaxin said, what's going on? How could there be such an occasion to accompany a drink and catch a strong man on the spot? This is really strange. Especially for someone like Deputy Factory Director Li, who is not a good person, he won't give people a chance. Director Li, I know how to drink. Ma Hua tentatively wanted to see what was going on inside. Okay, as long as you know how to drink, I'll accompany you later. I'll be in charge of speaking, and you can help block the drink. Deputy Factory Director Li didn't expect Ma Hua to be like Su Dumao, running the train with his mouth full, causing everyone to burst into laughter. Mainly to catch and temporarily block alcohol. After all, Su Dumao not only enlivens the atmosphere, but also plays a role in helping leaders block drinks and toasting guests. Ma Hua followed Vice Factory Director Li and Director Wang into the small restaurant. Behind them, Su Dumao and Silly Zhu stared at each other and forced them in a low voice. Silly Zhu, if it weren't for you today, would this good thing be on Ma Hua's turn? You wait for me. Say it again. Be careful, I'll spank you. Entering the small restaurant, Director Yang and the leaders of his sister units were whispering. Seeing Deputy Factory Director Li and Director Wang come in, Director Yang's face didn't look good and his anger clearly lingered. What's going on? How did it start? He, who is upright and comes from the military, detests lack of discipline and chaos the most. Especially in front of guests, it's simply embarrassing. Deputy Factory Director Li casually wrote, it's nothing, the two people in the kitchen are bumping and bumping, both hot-tempered, and they just start arguing. Upon hearing that the situation was not too serious, Director Yang's expression softened slightly and he said, has it been punished? Punished. After Vice Factory Director Li finished speaking, he laughed heartily and spoke kindly to the customers, changing the topic. It's not worth mentioning a little bit. Today, the most important thing is all the distinguished guests from the agricultural machinery factory. We must sincerely welcome friends, brothers, comrades. The guests were also full of smiles and kind words, and both sides exchanged polite greetings. The banquet began, and Ma Hua watched his words and expressions, constantly helping the steel rolling mill to block and toast, without any fancy toasting words. When he was drunk, for some reason, the leader of the agricultural machinery factory praised him, saying, this little comrade is really a solid person. He looks pleasing to the eye. What is your current job? Are there any difficulties in your work or life? This is partly polite and partly overly enthusiastic, but it's actually not quite appropriate. Ma Huafu reached his soul, but he had already understood his reward and when it would be distributed. At this very moment, through this slightly unconventional and seemingly lucky way, distribution is being carried out. So Ma Hua took advantage of the situation and showed a bitter expression, speaking about his difficulties. What kind of family discord, brother and sister in law disdain, insufficient food and drink, and no savings. The most important thing is that when we are about to get married, the house will be reserved for our eldest brother. In the future, when we get married, both husband and wife will have to rely on each other's noses to live. The leader of the agricultural machinery factory sighed and said, "There's nothing we can do. Every household has such and such topics." Deputy Factory Director Li also nodded in agreement and said, "Who said it's not? Brothers divide their property, and it's already considered harmonious to just curse behind their backs. There are quite a few who start fighting and grabbing things." On the contrary, Yang, the director of the steel rolling mill, is a sincere and truthful person. Upon hearing that Ma Hua's current living conditions are not satisfactory, he thought for a moment and said, "When it comes to the family courtyard of the steel rolling mill, the old quadrangle courtyard, and one or two cramped small houses, the conditions are really not very good. Ma Hua, if you only want to move out, get married, and start a family, we can help you allocate such a welfare housing in the factory. You can receive a monthly rent of 30 cents, which will be deducted from your salary. Do you feel it's suitable?" Ma Hua suddenly lost half of his alcohol strength. "All right, I can share a house, so I finally don't have to look at people's eyes and rely on them. This reward is amazing. I am willing. As long as you're willing, by the way, don't mind. There are many reasons why these small houses can't be separated." Director Yang did not specify the specific reason, and Ma Hua wisely did not ask further. At the table now, there is no room for him to delve deeper into the matter. Remuneration distribution successful, one welfare room for the steel rolling mill. Ma Hua watched as the prompts slowly dissipated, completely understanding what the prompts meant in his heart. From the strange thing that appeared just now to the promise of dividing the house now, everything has finally returned to normal. This is the ultimate reward for Ma Hua's capture of the meme, which is very considerable. If he had just pointed out that his salary was low and that he was not yet a formal worker, perhaps he could have been resolved, and the content of the compensation would have changed again. This process and outcome are obviously similar to MCA obtaining an opportunity to gain benefits. As long as he doesn't deliberately die himself, he can safely receive benefits as a reward. After accompanying the drinks, the leaders dispersed separately, and Ma Hua also wanted to leave with drunkenness. At this moment, Silly Pillar came in with 2 large rice boxes that were 30 to 40 centimeters long. After entering, Silly Zhu first glared at Ma Hua and saw that Ma Hua was infuriated with alcohol. He muttered to himself, "Did you drink cat urine? I won't settle accounts with you today. I just started pouring the stewed chicken into the lunchbox, and then started pouring other meat dishes. This rice box is really big, it's like putting several plates of meat dishes and stewed chicken inside." Ma Hua shook his head and watched the scene, walking out a bit crooked. Silly Zhu stared at his back and snorted, "Kid, starting tomorrow, you're going to have a hard time." After speaking, Silly Zhu also walked out with a rice box, calling on the cafeteria assistant to clean up the small restaurant, and left the steel rolling mill with great strides on his own. The fact that Ma Hua caught the stick and implicated Silly Zhu in being punished was remembered by him. He decided to handle this kid and teach him a lesson. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Stupid Stuff. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Stupid stuff. Drunk out of the back door of the steel rolling mill cafeteria, Ma Hua's mind cleared up a lot and walked towards home along the road. Walking to a roadside display of cement pipes, Ma Hua heard the voice of a child talking on the roadside. As soon as he lowered his head, he saw Bang Gung and 2 little girls wearing flower-padded jackets sitting together eating chickens. "Brother, chicken is just meaty." The older girl, who is also the younger sister of Batu, complained. "I used to steal soy sauce, but Silly Zhu took it back," said Bang Ji, biting the chicken fiercely. "There's another meddler in the cafeteria who insisted on catching me. I had a fight with him. Can you beat adults before?" Xiaodang was surprised. Bang Ji was a bit lacking in confidence, but in order to not lose face in front of his younger sister, he waved his chicken bones and said, "Of course, who am I? Do you remember watching that Little Soldier Zhang Jie movie last year? I'm even better than Gotzi. Xiao Dang chuckled and said, you just talk nonsense. If you don't believe me, ask silly Zhu. He said I'm the smartest child. Bang Ji patted his chest and shouted, finally coming from Xian. Silly Zhu has praised him more than once, especially after Bata Ji stole something from him. Silly Zhu always laughs and says, good kid, so clever. The other little girl is Huai, the sister of Bangang. Huai is only 5 years old this year. While eating chicken, she said seriously, our mother said, you can't call uncle he silly. Bang Ji didn't care and said directly, you are children, you can't shout. I'm an adult now, I can shout. Look at the adults in our courtyard, who doesn't call him stupid pillar. Huai seemed to understand but didn't understand, feeling a bit reasonable, and then ate chicken with a heavy head. Bang Ji ate the chicken and sighed, that guy named Ma Hua is really meddling. Ma Hua leaned forward and said, where am I meddling? Ah. Bang Ji was startled and quickly hid the chicken in his cotton jacket. Xiao Dang also realized and hid the chicken behind him. Huai stared blankly at Ma Hua, not knowing why, and continued to eat chicken. Brother, why don't you eat it? The reason why Ma Hua didn't go home directly was because there was a prompt in front of him again. Ask the truth about the stick meme of stealing chickens and receive a fixed reward. The last payment was a compensation, and this time it is a fixed compensation. Regardless of whether the compensation is good or fixed, MCA feels that it cannot be missed. As soon as he came out, he scared Bang Ji to death. Does Ma Hua want to meddle in his own business again? What do you want to do? The chicken hidden under the cotton jacket, hot and painful, bared its teeth and shouted at Ma Hua. Ma Hua said, I don't want to do anything, it's a bit strange to see you guys eating chicken. Where do you get this chicken from? Ma Hua said so, and Bang Ji knew it was useless to cover it up. He quickly took out the chicken from under his cotton jacket. It was so hot. You can't control it, I picked it up from outside. Bang Ji said a word directly, licked his lips, and started eating chicken again. Ma Hua smiled with a hint of alcohol in his mouth and said, if you don't tell me, I know it too. Stick meme, you went to the cafeteria today to steal soy sauce because you stole this chicken first. This chicken should be from a courtyard house. If you don't say it, I'll go to the courtyard and ask who's missing the chicken, and call the police to arrest you. If you say it, I won't care about it. I'll have to go home and sleep quickly. Ma Hua's words hit straight at the soft side of the stick meme. He knew he couldn't withstand questioning, and he also knew that Ma Hua might really catch him, unlike a foolish pillar. As for what Ma Hua said, I don't care. Believe it or not, it must be adults coaxing children. Why are you so meddling in your affairs? What does it have to do with you to steal Su Dumao's chicken? Bang Gung shouted at Ma Hua. Oh, just admit it. It's just a child. At this point, Ma Hua received a prompt. Fixed compensation. One chance to avoid disasters, small. What kind of thing is this? Ma Hua really felt that the prompt was confusing and did not provide a detailed explanation. Forget it, take your time to explore. Reward. Upon receiving it, Ma Hua immediately left. In the bewildered gaze of Bang Gung and Xiao Dang, Ma Hua smiled and said, okay, steal whoever you like. Next time I ask you, you still need to cooperate well, okay? Bang Gung instinctively nodded and saw that Ma Hua had really walked away. Oil Flower's dirty paws scratched her hair. Did you really leave? Don't mind your own business anymore. This Ma Hua is so strange. Seeing the locust flowers eating fragrant next to him, Bang Gung couldn't figure it out and stopped thinking. No matter what, focus on eating chicken. The three siblings are eating chicken with their heads down. Not far away, silly Zhu walked with his lunchbox in hand. It's not Ma Hua's willingness to care whether the brother and sister of the stick meme will make a big fuss by stealing chickens, or whether they will be discovered. On the way home, what Ma Hua was thinking was that both of his rewards were related to this guy Bang Ji. Could it be that his prompts were actually related to some characters in the courtyard, which triggered the reward task? If that's the case, I really need to think carefully about it myself. Just thinking about it, I entered the alley and arrived at my own doorstep. A woman was walking out with a water basin, and when she saw Ma Hua, she smelled him reeking of alcohol. With a dissatisfied pout, the woman splashed the water from the basin into the ditch next to Ma Hua's feet. The woman turned around and went home, shouting, "Dad! Mom! Ma Hua is drinking outside, wasting money." This woman is Chao Jiuhua, Ma Hua's sister. Law and Ma Zhong's daughter. Law. Chao Jiuhua is quite short and capable. She is more effective than men in both household chores and physical labor. Although she doesn't look very good, Ma Hua's parents are particularly satisfied with her because she is so capable. As for the temperament of this sister. Law, it can also be seen from her face complaint that she is the kind of person who cannot hide things in her heart. People with this temperament, if they feel good, then they are really good. If you feel like you have taken advantage of her, it will be fatal. It will always make you look pale. Unfortunately, during the period when Ma Hua was accustomed to this era, it was when her sister. Law Chao Jiuhua felt that our uncle's food, drink, and clothing were all for us, taking advantage of us a lot, so the experience was not pleasant at all. Fortunately, I encountered a meme today and received a reward. Tomorrow, I can share a small house. No matter how bad the small house is, Ma Hua is going to move out anyway and doesn't want to be angry with this sister. Law who always looks down on her. Chao Jiuhua let out a cry, and there was an immediate reaction inside the room. Wearing a polished old sheepskin jacket and carrying a dry tobacco bag, Ma Hua's father walked out and looked at Ma Hua. "Did you drink?" "Come on in." Ma Hua's father asked Ma Hua to enter the door, insert it, and touch a stick from behind the door. Ma Hua saw this posture and quickly exclaimed, "Wait a minute. Why did you hit me? First, explain it clearly." End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Home has a classic. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Home has a classic. I hit you because you can't make a living. Ma Qingde, Ma Hua's father, answered Ma Hua's question with a stick. "How much do you only earn a month? Going to a restaurant for a drink. Did you still make friends who are neither good nor bad?" Ma Hua explained, "It's really not true. Today, the leader was entertaining guests in the cafeteria, and when he saw me, he asked me to go over and help the leader block the drinks. I'm not fooling around outside." Ma Qingde looked at him skeptically and said, "Really? Really?" Ma Hua nodded and walked out. Ma Qingde saw that he was not at all guilty and didn't seem to be telling lies, so he put away his stick with half a doubt and said, "Can you still come to the table to accompany the wine? Did you not offend the leader?" "No, no." Ma Hua's words echoed as he saw his elder brother Ma Zhong and sister. Law Chao Jiuhua standing at the entrance of the main house. He was too lazy to say anything more to them and went straight into his own cabin. As the alcohol surged, Ma Hua felt dizzy and sleepy. Before going to bed, I vaguely heard someone muttering, "Who knows if what he said is true or false? Maybe he won't take the right path. Dad, please be careful. Our family's money has been well collected. It's boring, living together like this is really boring." Ma Hua thought to himself and then fell asleep. When he woke up again, it was already pitch black, and Ma Hua's stomach was chattering inside. "My stomach is hungry." Turning on the dim yellow lights, Ma Hua walked towards the entrance of the main house. "Dad, Mom, are you all resting? Well, let's take a break. Have you all eaten?" Ma Hua asked again. "I ate it." Ma Hua took a look at the kitchen and found that the cold pot and stove were clean and tidy, without even leaving enough water for him to brush the pot. Ma Hua remained silent for 2 seconds before knocking hard on the door in the main room and saying, "Mom and Dad, you all get up. I have something to say." He shouted to the side room again, "Brother, sister. Law, get up too. I have something to do." Ma Qingde put on his cotton pants, put on a sheepskin jacket, and ran out of the room with a stick. "Stinky kid, you owe me a beating, right? You're not sleeping at night, what are you doing?" Ma Hua said calmly, "I'm moving out now." Ma Qingde paused for a moment and forgot to hit him with his stick. Ah! In no time, Ma Hua's mother, Ma Lu, Ma Zheng, and Qiao Juhua, were all dressed neatly, breathing out the cold of winter nights, and arrived at the main hall. Ma Qingde was smoking heavily on his dry tobacco bag, and the whole house was filled with the smell of smoke. Ma Hua said he has something to do. Ma Zheng asked. Ma Hua nodded and said, "Yes, something's up." Qiao Juhua pouted and said, "Shit, what can he do?" Ma Hua didn't beat around the bush and said directly, "I'm about to move out, just a few days." Ma Lu and Ma Zheng were both stunned, only then did they understand why Ma Qingde remained silent and smoked his own dry cigarette bag. Moving out. That's a good thing. Qiao Juhua was straightforward and immediately blurted it out. The horse pulled her arm hard before she realized it and finally stopped talking. After a moment of silence, Ma Qingde hoarsely spoke in a smoky voice, "Ma Hua, how much money have you saved? Isn't it convenient to find a wife by buying a bicycle at the end of the year? At this point, moving out is just paying for others' expenses, it's not cost-effective." Judging from the performance of this family, Ma Hua has gradually dissipated the frustration in his heart. As the saying goes, family affection is not false, but each has their own considerations. Ma Hua didn't leave, which was a bit eye-catching. When Ma Hua said he wanted to leave, Ma Qingde, Ma Lu and Ma Zheng were clearly worried that he wouldn't be doing well outside. Ma Hua replied to Ma Qingde, "I have been working at a steel rolling mill for 2 years. I don't spend much money on food and drink, and I don't spend much money on living at home. I have scattered a little and have saved 120 yuan so far. If you can get an industrial ticket, buying a regular bicycle is enough. There's no need to focus on buying 150 or 60 bicycles. Or to put it another way, the money I finally saved has broken the limit and it will be difficult to save it later." Ma Lu slowly said, "It seems like there is still 1 month left before the Chinese New Year. What's up? Let's talk about it after the Chinese New Year, right?" The implication is to advise Ma Hua not to rush out. Although everything is left for the Ma Zheng couple, we cannot drive our youngest son out during the Chinese New Year, especially renting a house outside, which is a waste of money and even less valuable. Qiao Juhua said to herself, "It's better to move out." However, her husband Ma Zheng kept staring at her with his eyes, so she had to temporarily remain silent. Ma Hua said, "That's not true. Today, I helped the leader block the drink, and the leader asked me a few questions. I said I'm getting married soon, and I'm just short of a wedding house. The leader said he will help me solve this problem tomorrow when he goes to work, which is to share a house that is not very good and live in it for 30 cents a month. He will deduct money from my salary." "Ah! How kind of you." Ma Qingde, Ma Lu, and Ma Zheng were all overjoyed. "Did you get the distribution room?" "It's down now. The house shouldn't be too good, it's all left over by others," Ma Hua said. "I guess it will take some trouble." "That's better than renting a house outside." Ma Qingde stood up and paced back and forth with joy on his face. "This matter needs to be done quickly." He patted Ma Hua's shoulder again and said, "Work hard in the future and don't go astray." Ma Lu also reminded Ma Hua that if he really wants to be allocated a house, what are the taboos, what are the requirements, and what must be prepared first. Ma Zheng also came over and said 2 good words to Ma Hua, congratulating him on being assigned a house. For a moment, Ma Hua went from being neglected as a boy to becoming the most concerned person in the Ma family. Ma Hua answered them a few words and asked, "Do you have anything to eat?" "I'm a bit hungry." Ma Lu brought 2 steamed buns from the basket of steamed buns in the main room. In these days and years, food is precious, and even the steamed buns are not willing to be placed in other rooms. They are all placed with the owner in the main room to prevent mice from stealing. This is also why Ma Hua knew he couldn't find anything else to eat when he saw that there was no food left in the kitchen pot. Ma Hua broke the cold and hard steamed buns, soaked them in plain water, and barely had enough to eat. After eating, he greeted his parents, siblings, and went back to the house. He returned to his room to rest, and Ma Qingde, Ma Lu, and Ma Zheng were all too happy to sleep. The family has solved a big problem, and Ma Hua will not suffer any injustice outside in the future. What a great joy! Qiao Juhua said, "Who knows if it's true or false?" However, she didn't pour cold water and was scolded by Ma Zheng and Ma Lu. She was so angry that she stared and stomped her feet and went back to the room to rest. The next morning, Ma Hua did not go to the cafeteria at the Red Star steel rolling plant first, but went to the 3-story small building where the factory leaders were located. The leader who came to visit the agricultural machinery factory left yesterday, and Deputy Director Li didn't seem to be a reliable person either. Ma Hua felt that the person at the table yesterday was actually Director Yang, who looked hot-tempered and difficult to deal with. Director Yang walked out of blood and fire, spitting a mouthful of saliva is like a nail. He arrived early, but Director Yang had a car that came quickly. After waiting for a while, Director Yang's car arrived. As soon as I got off the car, I saw Ma Hua. Director Yang didn't say much and asked him to follow me to the office to confirm the specific situation. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Difficulties from Silly Pillar. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Difficulties from Silly Pillar. In the office, Ma Hua told Director Yang that family allocation is not his own responsibility, and he must find ways to rely on himself and move out. After hearing this, Director Yang said, "Many families have your situation, and to be honest, this cannot be used as a basis for dividing rooms. After all, as a family, if you break bones and have tendons, you should still be responsible for eating and sleeping. If you were an outsider, even if you say 1,000 or 10,000 good words, they wouldn't give you a penny." He said to Ma Hua again, "Yesterday, you said you were getting married soon, but that's fine. As long as you don't mind the small size of that house and the darkness behind your back, I can give you a wedding room to solve your urgent needs. Where is your partner and when will they get married?" Ma Hua is a bit embarrassed, he doesn't have any partners. "I had to say, Director Yang, my situation with my partner is not very stable yet. Can we do this? I will tell her in advance about the house allocation. If she agrees, we can get married and share the house." "That's okay," Director Yang nodded and said, "By the way, you can also take a look at the environment of the house. If you're not satisfied with the house, then there's no need to divide it." After hearing this, Ma Hua couldn't help but be a bit surprised. "Is it so bad?" Director Yang nodded and said, very poor, very poor. In the previous allocation, some old employees would rather wait for the next batch than have such houses. I'll just talk about 2 houses. I just learned about the situation from the logistics department a few days ago, and I remember it quite clearly. One is the family courtyard of the steel rolling mill, and the other is on the side of the old courtyard house. These 2 houses, first of all, are half the size of the ordinary branch houses. The house in the family yard of the steel rolling mill still has a leaking roof that can't be repaired properly. Now it can only be used as a miscellaneous room in the family yard, filled with miscellaneous items. The old courtyard house, on the other hand, is often shady all year round, with hot and humid summers and cold and gloomy winters. It is now also used as a storage room, filled with miscellaneous items. After Director Yang finished speaking, he looked at Ma Hua again. After hearing this, Ma Hua was also quite speechless. No wonder no one chose this type of room division. Half the area, still living comfortably, feeling uncomfortable living inside. In the factory, there are also batches of houses to be divided. We don't want any of these houses, and the rest have a herd mentality and follow suit. Director Yang, look at this. It's all turned into a miscellaneous room, and you're asking me to get married in order to share this house. Isn't that a bit inappropriate? Ma Hua said somewhat awkwardly to Director Yang. After hearing this, Director Yang also began to ponder. Rules are indeed rules, but these two houses are indeed dilapidated houses that no one cares about. Strictly demanding Malaysian Chinese and treating this type of house as a wedding house is indeed not suitable. This is not helping Ma Hua, but harming others. This is really quite troublesome. Director Yang decided to cut through the chaos quickly and patted the table, saying, "You choose one to stay for now, and I'll get you the key. It's still 30 cents a month. If you can't get used to living here, then ask me to return the key. Also, when you become a full-time employee and are getting married, you can return the key and discuss the matter of dividing the house." Upon hearing this, Ma Hua also knew that Director Yang had been of great help. Otherwise, no matter how dilapidated the public house is, there is no reason to let oneself live in it first. Thank you very much, Director Yang. The old courtyard refers to the place where the cafeteria master Heyuju lives, right? After Ma Hua confirmed and received a positive answer from Director Yang, he immediately said, "I will choose the house in the courtyard." Director Yang was a bit puzzled and said, "Are you sure? A leaking house can be drained with just a few wash basins. It's not easy to find a way to live in such a difficult winter and summer house." Ma Hua nodded and said, "I'm sure the courtyard is bustling with people, it's quite good." In fact, since realizing yesterday that compensation should be related to people like Bang Gung, Heyuju, Qin Huairu, etc., Ma Hua has known that even if a quadrangle has a house, it has to find a way to get there. Not to mention anything else, the reward is the best way for him to change his fate. If it weren't for the reward for catching memes yesterday, how could Ma Hua possibly have found a house today, and how could he have the right to be tough on his parents, siblings, and sister? In law by saying that he would move out. People under the eaves have to bow their heads, unless they can take an umbrella and leave the eaves. So, no matter how shabby the house is, as long as you live in a courtyard house, there is still a chance to get paid and change your destiny. After agreeing on this matter, Director Yang acted swiftly and went to the logistics office to get the key to the house for Ma Hua. Ma Hua asked strangely, "Director Yang, since the keys are in the factory, how could that room become a miscellaneous room? In theory, there shouldn't be many people who can use this house, right?" This is because Comrade Yi Zhonghai, the 8th-level fitter in our factory, is a co-manager of the street office in the courtyard. This house has not been allocated, it is his ear room. We gave him a key, and as a result, he is easy to talk about, which turned out to be like this. Director Yang said. Ma Hua nodded and said, "Okay, Director Yang. Since he is a good talkative person, I don't think he will be difficult for me." Leaving Director Yang's office, walk past the bulletin board with notices of criticism and punishment posted on it. The name of the silly pillar, Heyuju, appears on the two notices of punishment and criticism. Su Damao's name only appears on the penalty notice. Ma Hua only glanced at it and then returned to the cafeteria, ready to start working. As soon as I entered the cafeteria, I saw the fat man circling around Shaju. I don't know how long he had been coaxing Shaju, causing him to smile and run a train with his mouth full. Ma Hua listened to Silly Zhu dance and tell the story, only to find out that after Silly Zhu returned home yesterday, the chicken in the lunch box caused trouble. Su Damao lost one chicken at home and said that Silly Zhu had stolen it. Then the two of them couldn't agree, and Silly Zhu beat Su Damao up again. As a result, the quadrangle held a general meeting to review the chicken thief. Su Dumao suspected that the reason why Bang Gung stole soy sauce was to eat chicken. Silly Zhu also felt that it was probably Bang Gung, so he stepped forward and confronted the chicken thief. His mother Qin Huai Ru said that she was sorry. This afternoon, she brought her uncle's sister Qin Jingru to introduce her to Silly Zhu. This is how good people have good karma. Silly Zhu was happily talking when he looked up and saw Ma Hua. He immediately slammed the teapot heavily on the table. Ma Hua, you kid can count it. What time is it? You're late for work, do you know? Ma Hua nodded and said, I know, but I have something to do today. Are you all busy? Are we all idle? Stupid Zhu's nose is not his nose, his eyes are not his eyes. How could I not have noticed before that you're being serious with a half-grown child? Why are you so nosy and meddling with mice? It's still the matter of Bada Gung being caught by Ma Hua. Silly Zhu is holding grudges. Silly Zhu shouted and pointed to the swill bucket. Alright, starting from today, you're responsible for pouring swill every day, don't cut vegetables. I can't afford someone like you who keeps a dog and a mouse. Disaster prevention opportunity once, small, start using. Ma Hua had a hint in front of his eyes. He didn't want to talk too much, but when he saw Silly Zhu talking and cursing, he arranged for himself to do the dirty work of pouring slops. The most despicable thing was to give himself a chance to avoid disaster from the reward he just received yesterday, which stimulated him. This anger also ignited for a moment. To the Qin widow's family, it has nothing to do with me, Ma Hua. Destroying my reward is not acceptable. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Disaster Prevention. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Disaster Prevention. Although I don't know what the opportunity for disaster relief is and what kind of disaster it is, being passively stimulated by this guy, Ma Hua, is quite popular. Firstly, the foolish pillar destroyed his own belongings, with unknown value. Secondly, the foolish pillar brings disaster to himself, which stimulates the opportunity for disaster prevention. Ma Hua directly confronted Silly Zhu and said, Silly Zhu, you'd better keep your mouth clean. They all work in the cafeteria, and you don't have the authority to decide on my job responsibilities. I can't cut vegetables, I can't deal with you, but what I do in the cafeteria is not something you can control. It's not clean in my mouth. Before he could finish speaking, Silly Zhu was already dumbfounded and staring. Kid. What's going on? My fist has already been raised, and I'm about to take action. The chubby man with a round head pushed Ma Hua hard and said, I see you're already full. Dare to stare at my master. Ma Hua was also caught off guard. He didn't expect someone else to take action next to him, and his body was pushed unsteadily. He fell towards the stove where the fire was lit. Whether it was a fire, a large iron pot, or a pot of hot water. As long as he touched it, he would at least need to be scalded. At that moment, one hand pulled on Ma Hua, and Ma Hua regained his balance and stood firm. Originally, Lu Lan, who was picking vegetables, stood up and helped Ma Hua. Ma Hua was also taken aback by the fact that disaster prevention should be focused on this. If you really want to lie on the stove, at least you'll be scalded red, and even burn scars that won't fade away for a lifetime. Lu Lan is also a bit strange. How could she meddle in her own affairs? But as she stood up, she decided to stay focused until the end. Lu Lan crossed her waist and looked at Silly Zhu and Fat Man, saying, Yesterday, I was criticized and reported for fighting, but today I'm fighting again. Silly Zhu, you haven't played enough, have you? Silly Zhu pouted and said, Does the matter with the old men have anything to do with you? Do you want to fight? Go home and get into bed, fight your man. As Silly Zhu spoke, the chubby man immediately chuckled, and many people in the cafeteria looked at him and laughed. Originally, Lu Lan would also speak vulgar language. This time, after Silly Zhu finished speaking, many people laughed together. However, Lu Lan's face didn't know why, as if she couldn't make a joke. It sank and became iron blue, with a pair of hanging eyebrows drooping, watching Lu Lan, whose face turned pale with laughter, and the self-proclaimed humorous silly pillar. Ma Hua took a step forward and punched towards him, saying, "Silly pillar, please keep your mouth clean for me. Good kid, I didn't even beat you up. You can fight with me." Silly Zhu exclaimed in his mouth, tilting his head to give way to Ma Hua's fist, ready to counterattack. He has learned wrestling techniques and has a strong body. Dealing with someone as thin and weak as Ma Hua should have been simple and easy. This time, there was an accident. Before he could retaliate, he slipped and fell. Ma Hua immediately rushed forward, rode on him, and punched him in the face. These few punches were very frustrating, and a golden star appeared in Silly Pillar's eye sockets. At this moment, he also felt a surge of energy, roaring and unleashing his strength to lift Ma Hua away, ready to turn over and beat him. "Stop it all for me!" Lu Lan screamed and stood in front of Heyuju's fist. "If you want to lose your job, you can fight. I see if you dare to beat up lesbian women." Heyuju gritted his teeth, and on a cold day, 2 white breaths came out of his nose. "Okay, Lu Lan, I can tell. You pull the crossbar. Ma Hua hit me, why don't you pull him? I'll fight back, you block it." When Ma Hua hit you, he was venting his anger on me. Lu Lanli was furious, "Who made your mouth dirty to me?" Heyuju had nothing to say, and his angry fingers pointed at Lu Lan repeatedly. "Lu Lan, are you unreasonable? How many times do you joke around? Today, I'm just joking, can't you afford it? Can I talk to you about this?" Lu Lan's teeth were sharp and she crossed her waist very aggressively. "When I'm willing to joke, that's when I'm willing. If I'm not willing, you're just teasing women. Get it? I can't reason anymore." Silly Zhu couldn't really hit a lesbian. It's too embarrassing to do such a thing, and no leader would spare him lightly. I had to reach out and point to Ma Hua behind Lu Lan, saying, "Okay, Ma Hua, you wait." Today, Lu Lan deviated from her stance. "Let's have another demonstration another day." "Yeah, I'll give you one hand, you can't even do it." As Silly Zhu retreated to the side, the chubby man followed behind him and constantly advised him. The cafeteria was quiet, but today the leader was not alarmed, and everyone saved trouble. Ma Hua and Lu Lan looked at each other. "Thank you very much today, Sister Lu Lan." "What are you thanking?" "I have to thank you." Lu Lan sat down again to choose dishes. "I wanted to tear up that stinky mouth of Silly Zhu long ago. Today, you can be considered venting your anger on me." He gestured for Ma Hua to sit down and said, "Come on, help me choose dishes together." Ma Hua sat down to choose dishes, while muttering to himself. It seems that the opportunity to avoid disasters is not just one, but lasts for a short period of time. Or is this disaster relief opportunity aimed at the conflict with Heyuju today? Going to work, working, and being busy is half a day. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, someone walked out of the cafeteria and came back with an excited face. The movie outside is blazing up. Today, there is a new movie called Ashima. The winter evenings in the 4 or 9 cities come early, and it gets dark after 5 o'clock. Therefore, at 4 o'clock, I set up a movie tent to prepare for the movie, which is just in time. This time, many people in the cafeteria couldn't sit still. In an era of extreme lack of entertainment activities, who wouldn't want to watch movies? Especially new movies that I haven't seen before. The work in the cafeteria is almost done, and people's hearts fluctuate. The chubby guy also ran out and later ran back to report to the silly pillar, "Master, Qin Huairu is with a rural girl and is preparing to watch a movie. That girl is so beautiful." Silly Zhu grinned and said, "What rural girl?" "That's your teacher's mother." The fat man quickly flattered and said, "That teacher is really beautiful." No wonder Su Damao, who is playing movies, came up and started talking again. Silly Zhu stood up angrily and said, "What? This bastard still deserves a beating." Just as he was about to go out and beat up Su Damao, Director Wang arrived and said, "Hey, Zhu, hurry up and stir-fry some specialty dishes. Deputy Factory Director Li wants to entertain guests." Silly Zhu said somewhat reluctantly, "Ah. At this moment. Otherwise." Director Wang glared, "Hurry up." After speaking, he turned around and left. Silly Zhu felt a bit depressed and had to say, "Okay, it should be my wife anyway, so we can't run away. Su Damao, this kid, see how I deal with him." He shouted again, "Fatty guy, Ma Hua, hurry up and cut the buns. Potatoes, radishes, and that." Ma Hua smiled and took off the apron from the cafeteria. "Master if you don't let me cut vegetables, I won't cut. I went to watch a movie." After speaking, he left the cafeteria directly. Silly Zhu glared angrily and said, "This stinky kid. When we clean up Su Damao, we'll also bring you one. Fatty guy, hurry up and cut the block. You're in a hurry to use it." The fat man looked dumbfounded and said, "Master, I also want to watch a movie." "You can take a look when you have time, hurry up," urged Silly Zhu. The fat man looked enviously at Ma Hua's figure as he walked further and further, so he had no choice but to start cutting. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Qin Huairu, you don't want to be known, do you? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Qin Huairu, you don't want to be known, do you? Stepping out of the cafeteria, many children and elderly people near the steel rolling mill have already taken up space with benches. There are also employees like Ma Hua who are not very important and come out to occupy a seat in advance. For example, people in the health room of the steel rolling mill, the barber shop of the steel rolling mill. Ma Hua approached and found that there was no place for him to sit, so he could only stand behind. The front is filled with long benches and short benches, with many elderly people, children, and employees sitting there. Who watches movies, who brings their own chairs? You don't bring a chair, it's like you haven't bought a seat ticket, stand back and watch. The movie hasn't started yet, there's not much to watch. What interests Ma Hua are the people speaking in the front rows. The three children, Bonggeng, Xiaodang, and Huaihua, sat on chairs waiting for the movie to play. Bonggeng's mother, Qin Huairu, was wearing a thick cotton jacket with blue background and white floral fragments, talking to a rural girl. The cotton jacket on this girl's body is a bit dirty and old, but it's not much different from most people. The main reason is that she can't help but look back and forth at her surroundings, and instinctively copy her hands inside her sleeves. Wrap your sleeves to keep warm during the winter. The older generation in the 4-9 cities would do this, but the younger generation in the 4-9 cities, regardless of whether they have jobs or not, no longer have this attitude. The younger generation in the 4 or 9 cities values a spirit of efficiency, and extravagance. They tend to shrink their bodies and cut their sleeves, which is something that most people do not know how to do. However, in addition to this demeanor, the girl's small face was fair and tender, her big eyes watery, and she also had a curious appearance, like a little white rabbit out of its nest for the first time. This is the first time Ma Hua has met such a pleasing girl. I took a few quiet glances and walked over. Passing by the projector, Su Damao and his wife Lu Xiaoyi were arguing without a word. "You can't move your eyes anymore, can you?" Lu Xiaoyi said. "Whoever looks, I'll just go over and say hello." Su Damao said, all right, I have something to do. Don't wait for me to eat tonight, I still have to drink with my leader after watching the movie." Lu Xiaoyi was drawn to her attention and said, "The silly pillar hit her face yesterday and it still hasn't subsided. How are you going?" "Just talk about going to the countryside to watch a movie, I slipped on the road and fell." Su Damao smiled and winked at Lu Xiaoyi, "Are you a smart man?" Lu Xiaoyi gave him a disdainful look and said, "Why didn't you say that yesterday? Su Damao was speechless for a moment and waved his hand. All right, don't disturb my work. Picking up the microphone and blowing air, he said, hello. Can you hear me all? Today we are showing the domestic movie Ashima, which tells the story of a young man and woman who resist the landlord's tyranny. In Su Damao's preface, Ma Hua walked through a few people and sat down on the bench of Qin Huairu's house in the front row. The rural girl was startled and shrank, saying, Comrade, are you? Qin Huairu immediately leaned over and straightened her chest through a cotton jacket, saying, Ma Hua. Why did you sit down? I want to watch a movie and move my own stool. I don't have your free time here. Ma Hua smiled and said, Qin Huairu, why can't I sit down? I have something to do. Go on the side. What's up with the children's house? Hurry up and stay on the side. Qin Huairu chased him. Ma Hua didn't leave and said, I said Qin Huairu, what did you do today? Who is this girl? Did you come from the countryside? Qin Huairu was amused by his words, half angry and half laughing, and said, Ma Hua, get out of here as soon as possible and don't play around here. To be honest, this is my sister Qin Jingru. I brought her here today to introduce her to your master. In the future, it may be your teacher's wife. You should pay attention. Ma Hua said, Qin Huairu, you're not right. If you say I'm a child, then this Qin Jingru is about the same age as me, and she's also a child. You introduced such a child to Hiyuzhu. You're 7 or 8 years away, aren't you? You're quite good at making a fool of yourself. Ma Hua's words immediately shook Qin Jingru noticeably. Mainly because Su Damao came over just now and said some bad things about Hiyuzhu, Qin Jingru suspected that Hiyuzhu was a fool. Ma Hua once again said that after being 7 or 8 years older, Qin Jingru was even more unwilling in her heart. My sister wouldn't have tricked me into going to the city and selling me to a single man with a mental illness, would she? I won't do it. Qin Huairu could see Qin Jingru's wavering and immediately frowned at Ma Hua, saying, No, you kid. Why isn't Yuzhu your master? Is there such a bad thing about your master? Ma Hua didn't argue with her whether Yuzhu was her master, but directly said, to be honest, if this can ruin things, then it means this situation is not a good thing. Where is a good thing hidden and afraid of others knowing? Ma Hua's words shook Qin Jingru's heart even more. Are you called Ma Hua? Comrade Ma Hua, what else do you know? Can you tell me? Okay, you come with me. Let's talk slowly. There are quite a few people here and we can't hear each other clearly. Ma Hua immediately stood up and gestured for Qin Jingru to follow. Qin Jingru suddenly felt a bit hesitant. It's better to have more people, let's talk about it here. Just entering the city, seeing everyone scared, she was also afraid that Ma Hua was not a good person. Okay, then let's talk about it here. Ma Hua extended his hand to Qin Huairu, please stay away and let's talk. Qin Huairu's face turned white with anger. Now she can see that Ma Hua, this kid, is going to go against the rules and pry at the teacher's wife. Ma Hua, if you have nothing to do, hurry up and get out of here. I'm warning you, your master is here and I have to beat you up. Also, Jingru, listen to me. Come up to me, don't talk to him. Ma Hua smiled and said, it's okay. How come I'm okay? Qin Huairu, come over here, I'll tell you a word, and you'll know something's okay. Don't give me this trick. Qin Huairu didn't want to say more to Ma Hua. Yesterday, your courtyard was missing a chicken. Ma Hua said. Qin Huairu was taken aback and looked at Ma Hua. How did this kid know? What do you mean by saying this? Does he know anything else? Yesterday when he returned home, Bang Zhen never even admitted to stealing a chicken. Of course, he wouldn't tell Qin Huairu, Silly Zhu, and others that they had met Ma Hua, so Qin Huairu still didn't know that Ma Hua had asked Bang Zhen about it. Ma Hua waved, but Qin Huairu was helpless and leaned over through Qin Jingru. Ma Hua whispered in her ear, "Qin Huairu, you don't want Su Damao to know about the story of the stick meme stealing chickens. How about making a big fuss? This is not just about losing money, the meme has ruined reputation." Qin Huairu gritted his teeth in anger and said, "Okay, stinky kid. Silly Zhu told you this, but you turned around and bit me, right?" Ma Hua smiled and said, "Look, you've already called him silly pillar, and you're saying he's not stupid." Qin Huairu immediately reacted and saw that Qin Jingru was wary and uneasy in her eyes. She knew that this matter was even more difficult to explain. Qin Huairu knew this was a foolish pillar and asked me to marry him. "Ma Hua, tell me what you really want to do." Qin Huairu asked with a heavy face. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Tacit Understanding with Qin Huairu. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 10. Father and Son Soldiers on the Battlefield. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Father and Son Soldiers on the Battlefield, Can You Manage It? Silly Zhu lowered the enamel jar heavily and stared at Su Damao. Su Damao smiled maliciously and said, "Yes, I can't control it. I'm just reminding you, Qin Huairu brought that girl with her, she's really water-spirited. She's like a small cabbage core, her little face can squeeze water out, so don't let anyone arch her. Today I'm watching a movie, and tomorrow I'll be resting at the factory and strolling the streets. How good is that? There's something to be said, isn't there?" Silly Zhu stared at Su Damao. "What did you say to Qin Jingru? You have a wife and are still acting recklessly. Be careful, I'll go to the factory to defend the imperial examination and report you." Su Damao shook his head proudly and said, "I do think so, but I haven't had the chance yet. Someone else will come over. Silly pillar, just wait for someone to pry into the corner of your wall." After speaking, he left with a big smile and went to the small restaurant to wait for the leader in the kitchen. Silly Zhu was taken aback by Su Damao's words and said, "Besides Su Damao, who else is there?" "Fatty guy, can you help me take a look?" Fatty guy. As soon as he turned his head, the chubby guy who was in the kitchen not long ago had already slipped away, most likely going to watch a movie. "Hey, I ran away too." Silly Zhu looked back on Su Damao's schadenfreude just now. "Let's not worry about anything else, let's clean up Su Damao, this bastard, tonight." Not long after, the leaders finally arrived. Su Damao was persuading and blocking the drinks in the small restaurant. "The leader is big, I am Su Damao, so the leader has 1 cup to top 3 cups, and this is 1 big and 3 small. What if I had 3 drinks? You have 3 drinks, I have 9 drinks. Okay. A dinner lasted for a full 2 hours, and Su Damao lay on the table, drunk and unconscious. Silly pillar with a wicked smile, took off his underpants, stuffed them into the stove, and burned them. I stripped off Su Damao's coat again and tied him to the stove. Silly Zhu sat beside him, feeling beautiful in his heart, if I don't go home tonight, I'll be with Su Damao. The movie has come to an end, and households are going home with benches. Jingru, let's go back. Qin Huairu shouted. Qin Jingru nodded and glanced at Ma Hua. At this point, if Ma Hua has nothing to say and doesn't say how to see you again next time, the two of them will basically not talk about each other anymore. Qin Jingru can't take the initiative to invite Ma Hua out, that's too impolite. Ma Hua took the opportunity and said, "Qin Jingru, don't go out tomorrow, just wait for me in the courtyard. I happen to be off work tomorrow, so I have allocated a small house in the courtyard to tidy up and move over." Qin Jingru was pleasantly surprised and said, "Have you divided the houses now?" "Let's make do with living in a small house for now, when we get married, the factory will give me a bigger one," Ma Hua said. Upon hearing these words, Qin Jingru didn't understand the difficulty involved and thought that Ma Hua should be able to do it. She nodded repeatedly. This Ma Hua, the days ahead will be very good. Wait for him in the courtyard tomorrow, maybe we can give him a try. Qin Huairu was surprised and interjected, Ma Hua, did you divide the house? In a courtyard house. Where are there any vacant houses in a courtyard house? They all said it's a small house, let's make do with it first, Ma Hua said. From now on, we'll be neighbors like Qin Huairu, but we need to take care of each other a bit. Qin Huairu Xin said that you are not a good person. Threatening me with a stick to steal a chicken may not lead to anything in the future. I take care of you. Be wary of you. Qin Jingru followed Qin Huairu's family and heard a faint voice with a stick meme. That Ma Hua is not a good person. I went to the cafeteria to get soy sauce, but he caught me. What else haven't you told me? I'll spank you when I get home. Qin Huairu's voice was filled with anger as she walked away. The scattered flashlight light, like fireflies in the night, gradually dispersed and drifted into every household. Ma Hua also returned to his own home. Knocking on the door, the family finished their meal again and still didn't leave any food for him. These days are really dull and tasteless. Let's leave here on our own and live the life we want. Call Ma Qingde, Ma Lu, Ma Zheng, and Chao Jiuhua over again, and Ma Hua talks about her own situation. I have the key to the house. Tomorrow, I will pack up my things and move in. But we need our family's help. Ma Hua said he had obtained the key, and the 4 members of the Ma family were overjoyed. Even Chao Jiuhua, who had previously suspected Ma Hua, also smiled happily. Finally moved out, and this is her own home. Ma Hua, tell me what you need from our family. Chao Jiuhua said enthusiastically and proactively. The first one is that the house is a shady and poorly ventilated small house. It's cold in winter and hot in summer. Since I moved in tomorrow, I'll just make some changes and see what I can do. Ma Qingde's smiling face slightly restrained as he took a puff at his dry tobacco bag and said, to prevent moisture, you need to mix lime with lus, mix it evenly in 3 to 7 parts, and compact it firmly. It's best to add another layer of cement on top. I can still live under the shade of my back, but I can't do without ventilation. I need to open a transparent window. Oh, that's good. Tomorrow, I'll find someone to fix the floor and windows, Ma Hua said. Ma Qingde became angry and knocked on the table with a dry tobacco bag, making a solemn voice. It's just a day. How much does it cost to find someone? This job can be done by the 3 of us men. Yes, Ma Hua, don't look for anyone, it's not worth it. Ma Hua was quite reluctant, but both Ma Qingde and Ma Zheng said so they had to accept their kindness. There is one more thing, which is the house I shared, and there is also a person with a key. That person is an old employee who speaks with great prestige, and my house has been used as a common storage room in a courtyard. Before Ma Hua could finish speaking, Ma Qingde stood up and said, what's assigned to you in the factory is yours. Don't be afraid, isn't it just about fighting for a house? Tomorrow our whole family will go and see who dares to rob our house. It's just a matter of renovating the room, it won't take much time. Ma Hua's heart was also quite warm, and he nodded in agreement. When it's crucial, it's still about visiting family. So, as the saying goes, most family disputes are not considered bad people, but rather have their own reasons and positions. As Ma Hua prepared to move out, he saw the unity of his family. After finishing the conversation, he asked Ma Lu for 2 steamed buns, then mixed them with hot water to eat and put a cushion on his stomach. The next morning, the Ma family of 5 set off with Ma Hua's bedding and luggage, heading towards the courtyard. Just arrived at the quadrangle, the courtyard was full of people holding a meeting together. Early in the morning, a group of people had just crawled out of bed and had a meeting together, which was really strange. Standing among the crowd were Lu Xiaoyi, who had a bleeding mouth and a swollen nose and face, as well as Su Damao, who had a bloody face. Su Damao is shameless. Lu Xiaoa pointed at Su Damao and shouted, his underpants have fallen on the bed of a wild woman. End of this chapter.